Hey, welcome back to the 100 Hours in About an Hour podcast. I'm Brendan, and with me, like last week, is Brock. And today, well, I'm not totally sure what we're going to be talking about yet, but we'll get to it.
Of what we were going to talk about at least.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I thought we were going to have like an idea of what we're going to
We,
talk
we
about at
do,
least.
we do. We're gonna be talking about like what exactly makes a Japanese RPG a Japanese RPG, because it's a little bit of a divisive topic because of indie companies mostly.
Oh, okay, I thought this is where we're just going to argue about whether or not Dark Souls is a JRPG or not.
My opinion is not so.
Oh, okay. I kind of think it is, but that's fine too.
It just comes off more as a Western RPG to me, even though obviously it's made in Japan, so it is a quote unquote Japanese RPG. But
Yeah. I mean, we can get into the semantics later.
yeah,
So, what have you been up to this week?
well, I started playing Saga. Like I said, I think I said I was going to at the end of last week.
Yeah.
But then I got distracted by the hot new game that everybody's probably been playing on Twitter, uh, which is Genshin Impact, which is I think it's a Chinese developed uh, action RPG that also happens to have gotcha elements that don't really matter. The community seems to think that the company was probably making the game and then decided to tack on the gotcha elements afterwards.
So it's free to play though, right?
It's free to play, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know why you'd ever spend money on it besides getting a PNG of a waifu, but
Isn't that why most people spend money on phone games?
yeah. I mean, some phone games you actually have to have the good units, but Genshin Impact isn't even like a phone game. Well, it is a phone game, but you can also play it on PC and PS4, which is why I'm like, there's no way it started out in development as a gotcha game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like two. I don't think. I'm sure PS4 has gotcha games. I don't know what I'm talking.
I can't think of any.
There's probably J only or something.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case, but I don't think any Western gotcha games are on PS4 besides Genshin Impact.
Thank goodness.
But yeah,
I
it's
mean, the
actually
Switch has.
like, hmm?
Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say the Switch has a gotcha game. It's called Xenoblade 2.
You have to pay for that one though.
Yeah, it's the worst of both worlds.
That's actually I think becoming a big thing now in Japanese RPGs, unfortunately.
Just
Um,
rolling for things.
yeah, because the newest Legend of Heroes uh, game, like the series Legend of Heroes, Trails in the Sky, and so forth. The newest game I think is going to have gotcha rolls in
That sounds awful. You're really not selling me on this series, dude.
it. You just don't have to play that one. It's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, I, at one point, I'm going to invite like Maito or Doobie on, and I'm just going to rant about how the series is just going down a death pit of fan service and dumb stuff. But you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course. And I'll just sit here and nod and be like, "Yeah, that sounds awful, man. Wow. Oof. Yeah."
yeah,
I'm
like
shaking my head right now. By the way,
the,
just
the, the game went from like a very nice like romance between two characters in the first game series to like every single protagonist now has a harem, and it's like, come on, people in Japan don't even like that much.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of harems are kind of cringe, bro.
Well, they just ruined the writing. Like, so harems and like we're going way off topic here, but like in an anime where like it's specifically about like a harem, isn't that bad. But when you like take a harem and you shove it into like a game that already had good writing, it just ruins the writing. It just comes off terrible.
Yeah. Can we pause for 1 second? I'm getting a phone call that I have to take.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
Essentially, harems in games ruin the writing because like when you have a harem in a video game, well, especially like Trails, which has so many characters in it, all of like the other male characters get like no development at all. Like
They
they
might have a interest, right? That like doesn't even pan out because it's like, who
well,
cares?
they're just not allowed to love anyone because every female has to want the male lead.
Yeah.
So like it just comes off super like unrealistic because they're just there.
What? I
What?
guess yeah. I was about to say like what mainstream games have that, but then I was just like, oh yeah, every Persona game.
Yeah, but Persona is better because it's built into the game.
And it's optional, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not part of the game. You can just like, not date every girl. And then I think in the newer ones, right? Like you can keep it platonic if you want.
Yeah,
In
and I mean
Persona 5.
you could keep it platonic in every game since 4.
Yeah.
Persona 3 was the only one that I think forced you.
Yeah, it was like, oh, you're max social rank with them. Well, guess what?
Guess you're banging now.
Fading to black, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, like the Persona series too, like you actually get to choose. And like
Yeah,
the problem with the new Trails games, the Legend of Heroes games, is like they have to leave it completely ambiguous on who the actual like like romantic interest is because everyone's going to choose someone different and it has to carry over from game to game
yeah.
and the plots carry over so they can't have a solution so it's just like hangs it's just garbage.
It's like it's garbage for multiple reasons. I don't know. I also just like the whole like harem thing in general is just sort of like it just feels outdated and also like treating people like objects in general
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
pretty
like
dumb.
you're in a store and you just pick everything you want and then these aren't people, these are just like things that like are yours, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just very possessive and in general like it's just like I said, harems are cringe, bro.
What I appreciate in Persona 5 is if you pick every single girl or like even like multiple girls, they just beat you up on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's pretty base, honestly. Like more games need to have actions for consequences. And that's like a mild reaction, honestly. Like in real life, if you did that, they would beat you up and then they would like burn all of your stuff and post about it on social media.
Yeah.
And like
It'd be
and then
deserved.
yeah, man, you just get it from every angle. But yeah, that's very unfortunate that your series is
Yeah.
falling to that.
It literally happened because they thought they would become more popular if they did it in that way, which I guess they've technically been rewarded with that, but I don't think that's the reason the series has become more popular.
Yeah, it's probably just slowly been a groundswell that's rising and rising and
Yeah.
then correlation, causation, all the buzzwords, right?
Yeah, and the reason it was particularly awkward in the newest couple games was because it was a school setting.
Oh
And they were
no,
like
man.
it's a school setting, we have to have a harem. It's like, come on, guys.
Ah,
Uh,
yeah, no.
they're moving away from the school setting, which I'm hoping will fix it, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think another topic we can do is it's just in the future. I'm just, getting whetting everybody's appetite for one that just popped in my head is the fact that every JRP protagonist is between 16 and 18 and the stigma of having like a mid to late 20s or God forbid early 30s character
Yeah,
as the protagonist because like the older guys are always like the coolest characters,
they
right?
are.
Like
Yeah,
Final Fantasy 12, Bosch,
yeah,
Final Fantasy 10, Oron.
yeah.
Uh, that's all I got right now,
Well,
but that's my
every older character in like Tales games are pretty awesome too.
yeah.
Kratos and Tales of Symphonia. Uh,
He's
uh,
weird though. He's like double agents you, but then doesn't actually double agent
yeah,
you
it depends.
you
And
if
like,
you pick the right route and all this other
yeah,
stuff.
Symphonia had some cool stuff going on, but
Yeah.
uh, then like
Rab,
every
Dragon
older
Quest
character.
11.
Oh yeah, Dragon
Hello.
Quest 11. Yeah, Rab.
Yeah, my boy Rab.
They're always perverts though, which is funny. I guess not in Final Fantasy 12, but
It's really like the super old guys are the
yeah.
perverts. That's like the Japanese trope or whatever that
But
seems to be a thing.
well, we're on this topic. It's really funny in like Tales games. So someone's like 40 years old, they're an old man, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. I'm getting
I'm
closer and closer to that
yeah,
every
same
day.
here.
Yeah.
I'm closer to 50 than to being born.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Why'd you can we change the subject,
Yeah, yeah,
please?
sure.
Oh
Man,
man.
I was gonna talk about something about old guys, and we were talking about old guys in games, and I was gonna bring up something. I don't remember what it was.
Well, see, you're too old.
Yeah,
First thing to go
my
in.
memory's
Damn
going
shame.
already.
No, I put a little bit more front mission, but I've been busy this week with just IRL stuff. Like one of my best friends has been in town. He just left about 2 hours before we recorded this.
Oh, okay.
So I was just hanging out with him. I haven't seen him in like 4 months. So
Yeah, I gotta go hang out with my buddy who lives about 3 hours south of here. Where I
yeah.
live.
Yeah, not a lot of time for video games this week, but have still been enjoying Front Mission 3.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend it. It's a cool game.
Yeah, I remember. Like, I think every front mission game is like at least all right, from what I recall.
Well, apparently there's like non strategy RPG front
Yeah, there's
missions in the
spin-offs.
later series that
Yeah.
people have kind of said are bad, but then there's a couple of them that are good. So I don't know what to think, man. I've only played one and a half. So
I'm pretty sure Front Mission 4 is at least good.
yeah,
I have heard that.
I heard 1 through 5 are all good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's I'm surprised. I'm waiting for like the strategy RPG genre to make a comeback. Because Fire Emblem obviously is super successful right now.
Strategy RPGs are a topic that we can go into great detail about, but honestly, man, like that's sort of what I was when I was playing Front Mission. I kind of had this discussion with people is that strategy RPGs have this very, very weird balance and push pull where it's very difficult to make a strategy RPG that's hard that isn't hard just because of numbers.
Yeah.
Because either you have this system where the player character is somehow super underpowered and they have to break the game just to do the fights, or they have to grind to do the fights. And then if you have a strategy RPG that just isn't hard, then it's super easy for the player character to just figure out something super broken and just beat the game, beat every fight in like 3 turns, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to balance a strategy RPG. So like most of them just end up being like kind of fun for the first third of the game, and then you actually get access to everything, assuming we're talking about kind of like a Final Fantasy Tactics or like a job system based strategy RPG.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then everything sort of opens up and you can do anything you want. And it's like, well, I have a brain, so what's the most broken thing I can do? Oh, I can hit every enemy on the field with level 5 death or whatever, like for
Yeah.
going back to the Final Fantasy Tactics thing. And then, Fire Emblem, it's, well, I have 3 characters that are really, really good, and I can just run them across the map and kill everything.
Yeah.
Front Mission was actually experiencing that problem. I don't remember if I mentioned this last week, but I eventually had characters that I had 3 characters that could wipe the map with just them because they just got to that point.
Yeah.
So.
I don't necessarily mind that too much. I prefer it to be like that than like excruciatingly difficult.
Yeah, and that's just part of it though. Is like there's a very, very fine line with balancing strategy RPGs where it's either going to be excruciatingly difficult, or the game's going to be potentially boring because it's not difficult and you can stomp the game.
Yeah.
So.
I think
Or the
Shining
game.
Force 2 does a really good job of that.
Yeah, I haven't played the Shining Force series, unfortunately. So, can't comment.
You should at least play Shining Force 2 at some point because I think it's the best one from like a game design perspective. Because like normally in strategy RPGs you have like just the map where you go from mission to mission.
Yeah.
Shining Force 2 has an actual overworld.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can add that to my infinitely long backlog of games that I might get around to in about 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I'll get back to you.
The only like balance issue with Shining Force 2, besides every character being generally pretty good, is the Phoenix that you get in the game, who's just completely busted.
So it's a lot of good characters and one broken one?
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. And like
I'd rather have a lot of good characters than like a couple good characters and a bunch of trash characters you can get tricked into using.
Yeah, I don't think any character in that game is particularly trash, except for like at one point you get like a selection of characters that are all like pre-promoted and they're kind of bad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's only.
But if you have like, if you have like the Fire Emblem stigma of never using pre-promotes, even though a lot of pre-promotes are good in Fire Emblem,
yeah,
you'll get around using them, I guess. But like, that's something else we can talk about when we talk about strategy RPGs. Is the pre-promote stigma? It's like insane that people are like, "Oh, he's pre-promoted, he's garbage." It's like, I mean,
it's hilarious in Fire Emblem as well because every pre-promote's pretty good.
Yeah, there's very few that are just trash.
Because what I've learned from watching Fire Emblem YouTubers is like promoting early is a good thing because promoted units are way better than not promoted units.
Yeah, I mean, when you get promoted, you get like 5 in every stat or whatever, something stupid.
Well,
When
it
you
catches
level up,
I think is what it does.
yeah, and like when you level up, you might get 1 in some stats. Promoting gives you between like 2 to 5 in every stat usually. So it's like, man, I can level up 10 more times, or I can use this item and gain the equivalent of like 15 levels. I wonder which one's better.
Yeah, I think the stigma comes from people only playing the new Fire Emblem games, where
Yeah.
promoting is not nearly as good.
I mean, I remember it being a thing back when like the only Fire Emblems that were out here were like 7 and 8.
Oh, those people were just dumb then.
Yeah. Or
Because
like,
7 and 8.
don't use Marcus because he's already promoted and he's an XP sponge. And it's like, I mean, yeah, you could do that, but you can also just kill bosses with him and not endanger your units.
You can beat the
So
whole game with Marcus. People are nuts.
yeah, Marcus, cool old guy, dude.
Yeah.
All
Every
comes
Fire
full
Emblem has that
circle.
cool old guy. At least they used to. Like they have Marcus, they have Jagan in the original Fire Emblem.
Who was the cool old guy in 8? Sacred.
Seth kind of. I mean, he's not old, but
Well, he's old by RPG standards.
Yeah.
He's like late 20s or something, right?
yeah. Seth is pretty old. He's like the retainer of the princess, so he can't be that.
He's the
that
wizened
young.
old man.
Yeah. And then 6, obviously, there's the one old guy, also Cavalier. It's always a Cavalier.
I mean, Hector's in 6.
Yeah.
He's the cool old guy.
Well, you start out with the Cavalier though too.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying like Hector's in 6. He's cool in 7, so he's the cool old guy in 6, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, he's like the only guy from like 7 that isn't dead in 6.
and then he dies in 6, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So, Brendan, what makes a JRPG a JRPG?
Well, I mean, first off, I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna be somewhat controversial. It doesn't have to be made in Japan.
Oh, okay.
But I think only if it's like turn-based can like a Western studio make a quote-unquote Japanese RPG.
You don't think a Western studio can make an action RPG in the JRPG style?
Because an action RPG is just an action RPG, and if it happens to be made in Japan, then it's and have like Japanese elements, then it's a Japanese game. But like,
So, Secret of Mana is not a JRPG,
it is because it was made in Japan.
but you said it's an action RPG.
Well, yeah. So the thing about like I can't call like Horizon Zero Dawn a Japanese RPG because it's so far different from like any action RPG that Japan has made.
Yeah.
Even though it has levels, has action combat. Secret of Mana just has like all like the Japanese RPG stuff, like the stats and the Japanese RPG tropes. I think the tropes are a big deal. Like it has to have the tropes.
So Secret of Mana is a JRPG and an action RPG, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So what is Secret of Evermore?
Well, because they see this is the problem, right? When you get into talking about this, because it's basically a copy of Secret of Mana.
Yeah.
But it's also
Is it a JRPG? It's the same thing.
It's wasn't it published by Square Enix?
It was developed by the American or a Western Square team, and it's got that SquareSoft load in when you open it. So is it a JRPG?
Yeah, I mean it's published by a Japanese company, so
it wasn't developed by one.
Sure.
The team that developed it was all Westerners.
Yeah. See, this is the problem you get into because like I'm gonna say that Dark Souls is not a Japanese RPG really, besides the fact that it's made by a Japanese company, because it's just like so far removed from like any Japanese RPG tropes. Like there's just nothing in there.
I mean, the game's depressing. Does that count?
that's a lot of games. The Last of Us 2 is depressing. Is it a Japanese?
It's depressing. It's overrated. It's needlessly difficult. It has bad design. Like it's got a lot of tropes in there.
So what you're saying is it's a Nintendo Entertainment System Japanese RPG?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a hard thing to, because the reason I wanted to have this topic is because I get irritated when people like call like indie studio RPGs that are clearly copying like the Japanese RPG formula not Japanese RPGs, even though they are.
Yeah, they just call them RPGs, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Does it mean is it like you're copying like Baldur's Gate?
Yeah, which they're not.
Or are you trying to copy like, you grew up with Chrono Trigger, so you're trying to copy like that, right?
Yeah.
It's the classic, you open the store page and it's like inspired by, and it's like, okay, it's a Final Fantasy Tactics ripoff. I get it.
There's so many like, I'm not gonna name names, but there's a lot of mediocre ripoffs out there that like
Oh yeah,
tried a little too hard because they didn't do anything original, right?
yeah.
And it's just kind of like, I've played this before.
I mean, I'm looking at one on my Steam right now that I started playing because I saw it recommended on the internet as like a decent. If you wanted another tactics game called Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark, if you've heard of this one,
I think I've heard the name.
it's it is made by people that really like Final Fantasy Tactics and didn't want to make a ROM hack, and they wanted to make their own game instead because it would give them more cred. Is
Yeah,
my
yeah,
best description. But I mean, like it's not a bad game. It's just okay. You can tell that they really like Final Fantasy Tactics, and they wanted to make a game inspired by it, for lack of a better. It's not horrible. It's like it's like a B. It's a B game.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's plenty of alright B games that are
Yeah.
worth your time, right?
Yeah, that's not even a disparaging comment. Like, if you like
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Tactics, you'll probably like the game, right? So,
Yeah,
and
like one of my favorite companies, actually, is one of these companies I'm talking about, but their games are actually fairly creative. Have you played any games by Zeboyd Games?
what games have they made? I don't
They
usually.
made Cthulhu Saves the World,
Okay,
Breath of Death 7. They're
I
both
own those games because of
they're dirt cheap.
like
It's
Humble Bundle
yeah,
stuff, and I've
yeah.
never played them.
They're like really good short NES RPG style, but like without like any of the dumb NES stuff.
Yeah,
Um, they're like a couple hours each. They're not even that long.
yeah.
Um, they've also made Cosmic Star Heroine, which is a 16-bit like Fantasy Star inspired JRPG.
I'm actually looking at that on my Steam page
It's
as well.
very good.
I've got a couple hours and I started it and then like got distracted and just never loaded it again. But it was fun what I played. I definitely want to finish it at some
Yeah. See, the key difference between like Zeboyd Games and like other studios, like Cosmic Star Heroine specifically has like their own combat system, so like
Yeah,
it's not
really-
ripping anything off.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely a fan.
Yeah, like the issue you run into is when like they copy everything verbatim.
So I'm gonna spin it backwards on you, since we're saying these games function. You're calling all these games JRPGs, right?
Yeah.
So what about all of the wizardry clones that Japan makes, and then the blatant they now have wizardry games that are made in Japan? Are those Western RPGs?
The Wizardry clones aren't, I would say, because they're not stylized in a Japanese RPG way, right? They're very Western in art and everything.
Some of them have some pretty anime art, but most of them are Western style.
The one I've played is.
Okay.
But like Etrian Odyssey, for example, is like very, very Japanese. It has Japanese tropes, it has Japanese art. The leveling system is much more like a Japanese game. So,
Can you multi-class in Etrian Odyssey?
yeah, you can.
Okay.
In the later ones. I don't think in the first one you can. You definitely can in Etrian Odyssey 4 onwards.
I see.
So like the remake of 1, you can probably multi-class, and the remake of 2, you can as well, I think. They never remade 3 though, which is a shame because it's the best one.
That's what everybody says.
Etrian Odyssey 4 is a close second though.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a game that's in my Steam library that I can recommend. That's actually a first-person dungeon crawler, and I can't remember the freaking name. So that's why
they're
that's
probably
why I'm
on my
kinda-
wish list because I feel like I added them after you recommended me. I could check real quick.
It's a game that was it was on like PSP and PSN, or not PSN. I think the 360 or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm probably completely wrong. Stranger in Sword City.
yeah, I have it actually on my wish list. Yeah.
That's a Japanese developed game that is very evocative of wizardry style, like just old school Western dungeon crawlers with just like punishing dungeons, right? Like there's like dungeons where it's like you can't use magic here.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Well,
It's just like, okay, so half my characters are useless. Yeah, deal with it. Or train up like 2 separate parties so you can have a team with all non-magic users and all magic users for the inevitable dungeon where no one can use skills, but you can use magic, right?
yeah,
And then, of course, the final dungeon, there's just like each floor has something wrong with it. So you can't just bring in a party of all magic because there's a floor with no magic, but then the next floor is no skills. And you're just like, I don't know what you want from me, game, and except for my suffering. And
to
the
be
game's
sad.
and the game's like, yeah, that's actually what we want. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my strategy would probably just bring in all physical people regardless, because at least they can fend for themselves without magic.
Uh, yeah, but without skills, they're pretty useless.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay, so what you're saying is it's more about the style of the
It
game.
is the style more than anything, which is why I always struggle to say like Dark Souls is a Japanese RPG, because
It's like a hybrid, man, to me.
it's
Like
a weird spot, right?
it's definitely that middle line where if someone called it either one, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue with them depending on the mood I'm in. Like right now, obviously, I'm gonna kind of take the other side because we're having a discussion, and I don't want to be like, yeah, no, I agree with you. Um, but I can definitely see it being called either way to go completely lukewarm on you.
The best way I would put it is it's a Japanese RPG that's clearly inspired by Western games, like without a doubt.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, though, is it's like also inspired by their own games because they have Kingsfield and
Yeah,
Eternal
well, they've
Ring.
been making like Western style stuff for ages, I guess. So that's probably true.
Yeah, so if they're at the point where they've been doing that for ages, at what point does it stop being Western inspired and just be their style?
True.
Like, do we have to go all the way back to say, like, if the original game in the series was inspired by a Western game from the 80s, but now we're in like 2015 and we made this game that's inspired just based off of our own stuff, is it still Western inspired at that point? Like, how derivative does it have to be?
Yeah. I think the key thing we're going at here at this point is that people shouldn't have like what's the word I'm looking for? People shouldn't like get into arguments over this kind of thing because
Oh, okay.
it's so hard. Because I see people on the internet sometimes get really cranky about like what makes a Japanese RPG, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're talking about Japanese RPGs, do you really have anything going on in your life? Let's be real.
Like, the only time I've gotten mad is I saw someone call Breath of the Wild a Japanese RPG one time, and I was like, no, 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 no.
I've seen a lot of people call. I say a lot of people. I've seen like when I'm just like, what's a DS RPG I haven't played, and I'll just Google, top or best DS RPGs, and you'll get a list, right? And it'll just say, there's like 10. Every Pokemon game is on there instead of just combining them and just saying like Pokemon, right? It's really annoying.
Yeah.
But inevitably there'll be like a Zelda game on an RPG list. It's just like, I don't think Link to the Past is an RPG, guys.
It's
Like,
not.
I know you play the role of Link, and it's a game. But if that's your metric, then every game is a role-playing game, unless like you're playing as you.
Yeah. My big like, is this an RPG or not? Like in general, is there leveling?
Yeah.
And if there's not, then it's not an RPG.
I'm trying to think of a game without. Well, leveling or advancement, because those are two different things.
Like actual
right?
level ups from like experience.
So Saga is not a RPG.
Yeah, that's a hard point, isn't it? You do level up though. Like,
Some of them you do.
things.
Some games you level up, and other games your stats just go up based on
Yeah.
what you do.
Well, I mean, that would make Final Fantasy 2 not an RPG also, because
Well, it has skill levels. Doesn't Final Fantasy 2 have like skill levels?
I think if your stats are going up from combat over time, I think it's the same as leveling up, really.
Okay.
Because
So
the
it's
same
not.
thing.
It's
There's
not
just
the
there's just no
actual.
number going up.
It's not the actual like level label. It's just the progression of gaining strength, whatever that means, gaining power from combat.
Yeah, and I mean, you're technically leveling up in Saga. It just doesn't say you're not level 10. Like,
Kind of, yeah.
because you get HP, you gain. I'm specifically talking about Scarlet Grace here. You get
Okay,
HP,
yeah.
and then like you get weapon levels.
Yeah, the Romancing Saga games are a lot more like Final Fantasy 2, where it's what you use, you get better at that.
Yeah.
There's no levels. What about have you played the Final Fantasy Legend games? I think we talked about this when I mentioned that the remakes are coming
No,
out.
I haven't. I'm gonna play.
Or not remakes, but remastered. It's like
Yeah.
the same game. It's not like Trials of Mana.
It's like the Mana collection they released.
Yeah. There is in Legend 3, so this is kind of getting off in the weeds, but it's kind of interesting. Your characters start out as humans,
Okay.
and these are like traditional RPG characters where you gain levels and gain stats, right?
Yeah.
But when you finish fights, their monsters will drop like monster parts. It can be meat or like parts if they're robots, right? And there's actually a spectrum where it's like if human is in the middle, it goes human, cyborg, robot to the right, and then human, uh, I think beast, monster to the left. I don't think the one in between monster and human is beast. I think I might be misremembering. But the interesting thing is, I believe cyborgs and beasts can still level up. Monsters and robots cannot. And the way monsters work is you eat monster meat and you turn into that monster. So you can still advance playing as a monster. You just have to eat stronger monsters and you just turn into it. And then robots are broken because what they do is they have no way of leveling up, but you buy parts from stores, and like stores start selling this in the first town, and you just spend money to get stats. And if you can, the speed run I believe like does a money underflow glitch and just maxes out everyone's stats.
Well, it is a Super Nintendo RPG. Of course, it has one.
It's Game Boy, but yeah,
it's same difference, same coding error.
Yeah. But so that's kind of interesting because it has like the traditional leveling system, and then there's like these two like kind of leveling systems with like the Beastmen and the Cyborg, because I think there's something funky with them too, but I haven't played the game in like 12 years, so you'll have to forgive me, listeners, for not remembering specifically. But then there's the monsters and the robots, which just completely can't level. So it's this weird like multifaceted system, right?
Yeah.
It's really cool. Like you get little robots and they just learn like death rays. And you're like, well, I'm going to give them 99 in every stat because I'm not spending money on anybody else because the rest of my team's monsters and they don't need anything. So
Saga seems like the studio that Square Enix really just like, or not studio, but like game series where Square Enix just like, let's just do this weird thing.
Yeah, that's why it's awesome is like all the game, like even the games that like aren't well liked, it's like, well, they did something different. Like there's I can't remember the name for the life of me right now. See, I need to like prep more, but I never know which direction we're going to go when we do this. So, I guess that's on me. One of them is like a board game. Like the world map is like a board game where you like roll dice and stuff and get random events.
That sounds really weird. Saga game. Let's see if I can find it. I like how there's an actual board game called Saga. So
that's not helping. I'll find it.
It looks like fun. The actual like board game.
Yeah, it's probably not related to Saga at all.
It's like my next goal in life is just start a podcast where I play a board game every week, but I don't have the money for that.
Can't wait to be completely wrong about it being a board game. Oh no, okay, it's Unlimited Saga. Thank God. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did that one come out?
2002. I'm reading the Wikipedia page, and I know people say it's not a reputable source, but screw you. Dungeon and environmental exploration plays out in a style similar to a board game. All right, that's all I needed to see. And I mean, RPGs can be board games. Look at 100% Orange Juice.
Yeah, that's a game that I've heard many things about, but I've never actually played. I own it.
I played it like when it first came out for a little bit, and I actually liked it, but like people that I knew just stopped playing it. It's like, I mean, it's like any other Mario Party style. Like you just get screwed by randomness, but it's just about having fun.
Sounds like fun to me.
You want to talk about RPG board games? I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole right here. Are you ready for this? Have you played Dokapon?
No, I've heard of it though. I know what it is.
I have never finished a game of Dokapon Kingdom because I've never managed to play with people that haven't rage quit. Because that is a long game. It's a long game. It is not Mario Party. It is not a let's sit down. Oh, you want to get wild, guys? Let's set it to 50 turns and make the game take 3.5 hours. Dokapon is like a 20-hour investment from 4 people. That is you sit down, you play for 4 hours, you save, and you're happy that you're level 20 and you didn't get screwed by the Darkling when they show up. Oh my God. Yeah, the game, it's an actual like world map board game where you pick a starting class and you have to like go around and get in random encounters on the board and level up, but then you can also fight each other and screw each other over and just like take their stuff. And then the game also has a comeback mechanic, and it's the most brutal comeback mechanic I've ever seen in my life because the fourth person, the fourth person in fourth place, like you'll see like a little aura start to go around, like this evil aura, right? And they get the curse of the Darkling. And what the curse of the Darkling does is it turns them into the Darkling, which is just like this overpowered like boss character thing where they just get like the best equipment in the game, and they have all these powers they can use. Like one of them is just teleport to somebody else's space, so you can just immediately fight them. And you just fight them and just destroy their equipment.
This sounds like the Japanese version of Munchkin. I don't know if you've ever played Munchkin.
I have played Munchkin, and one of my friends won't play it with me anymore. I can go into that in a second, but that's a good way of putting it. It just lasts way longer. The game's like cool. It's insane how much depth in gameplay there is. I mean, I say depth. I'm sure there's like a min-max way to play it. I never got to find out because like the only game I played that lasted any amount of length, like past like one session, my friend's brother was in third place, and then my friend was in fourth place. And so, of course, instead of going after people in first place, he went after his brother, broke his sword and shield, and then my friend's brother got up, didn't say a word, just set the controller down, and just turned off the Wii and walked out of the room. It's like, guess we're not playing anymore, guys. Munchkin, though, I don't own it. My friend did, and he wouldn't play it with me anymore because I realized the thief class exists.
Oh yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, Munchkin's like a dungeon crawler board game where you level up and you get items and stuff, and you can become different classes. And then each class has its own ability, and the thief has an ability. I might be misremembering it a little bit, but it goes something like this. You pick a player, you roll a dice. On a 5 or a 6, you steal an item from theirs, and on a 1 through a 4, you lose a level. It's something like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't say you can't do this if you're level 1, and it doesn't say you can't do it as many times as you want. So I got thief one time, and I was like, wait, I can do this? And I was only like level 3. And I was just like, okay, everybody has stuff. I'm just going to roll dice until I have all of your stuff.
I think if you lose a level at level 1, though, you like die.
I remember like looking it up on my phone, and I didn't see anything, but I didn't look very hard. Yeah. So I might be wrong. I might have been cheating at Munchkin, but I was a thief class. So
well, that's like in the spirit of the game to begin with.
It's on theme.
Yeah.
But Dokapon is like Mario Party plus Munchkin on steroids. I think the back of the box says something like, be prepared to lose your friends or something like that. It's not lying. It is not lying. But I would call that game a JRPG.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just like in a weird format, right? Where it's a multiplayer JRPG where you compete against each other.
Yeah, but no, you have like level stats, classes, you can multi-class, ninja's broken. It's got all the classic stuff.
Yeah, it's a shame. It doesn't look like they've made a new one in any recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can play the Wii version on Dolphin online with people.
Yeah, I'm sure.
If you really wanted to make people on the internet hate you for some reason.
I was hoping there was like a Steam version.
Man, now I wish there was one.
Because I mean, you could also, it's on PS2 as well. So
yeah,
you could play it on PS2, but I don't think the net play is very good for PS2.
I think PS2 only lets you play with 2 people. I don't think there's multi-tap support. So the Wii version is like the definitive edition, I believe.
It's so strange that PS2 only had 2 controller ports.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the majority of the library on it was RPGs, so, I guess they were like, who cares?
That's true.
What about MMOs? How do you feel about those as far as, are they just not JRPGs? If it was like Final Fantasy 14, is that a JRPG?
If it's stylized as one, yeah, it's a JRPG.
What about WoW? Is that a JRPG?
It's a Western RPG, so.
They're both MMOs, though.
I know, but it's we're coming back to the stylism argument, right?
Okay, but they both have
WoW is
levels.
very clearly Western, right?
They both have levels. They both have stats. So you're just going straight to style. That's the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I'd call Final Fantasy 14 a Western or a JRPG. I think I just call it an MMO.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I guess there are people that refer to it as a Japanese RPG, but like in MMOs in general, I always just go MMORPG because that's what they are.
Yeah, I'd like any MMO. I'm just like, that's just an MMO. I don't distinguish it as Western or. I think the only one I would probably make a distinction for is probably Ultima Online.
Yeah,
it is a very Western style RPG. Like, it's got the isometric perspective. You gain like individual skill level ups. the game is cruel and unforgiving. I don't know how much you know about Ultima, but it's
I know vaguely about it.
like you can have how you know how Final Fantasy 14 you can have a house. I
Yeah.
don't know. Ultima Online you could have a house, and houses had keys, and keys were an actual item. If you lost your key, you lost your house. If someone else had your key, they had your house. If you lost it, tough.
It's pretty funny. I don't know how you'd manage to lose your key besides dying.
I mean, it people found ways. Like that's an MMO where like the dev entered the game as like an all powerful being, and then the players were just like, "Hey, can we try and kill him?" And they did. So yeah, that's its Ultima Online was its own breed of insanity. But
Yeah.
that's I digress.
I miss like the old era of MMOs
Yeah.
where like it wasn't so like carefully curated.
Well, my understanding is that Eve Online is like the last bastion of that,
Yeah.
where people will pay for services with real money outside the game. Like they'll pay people to like infiltrate whatever, I don't remember what the guilds are called, corporations.
Yeah, corporation.
They're like I'll pay you $200 to infiltrate a corporation and then rob it in the game.
Yeah.
And then they'll complain on the forums, and then the people who made the game are like, maybe you shouldn't have given him access to your bank if he wasn't trustworthy. Like that's your fault. Get over it. Or people will just like hijack ships, and it's just like, I spent like 6 months getting money to pay for this, and they just stole it because it was in the corporation port, and they just flew out. And it's like, yeah, that's your fault. Get over it. Like they did it within the game. Like that's on you. It's just like, it's like peak late stage capitalism, libertarian paradise.
It is like the stories I hear from that game are hilarious. But
Yeah.
from what I understand, it's very tedious to actually play.
The game's a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
the massive space battles will happen occasionally between corporations are always cool to watch.
Yeah, that's like the one exciting. That's when you like plot a graph in Excel, right? And you're like, wow, look at this, like make lines, and then you go like 3 tabs over, and it's just columns and columns of data, and that's what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're
people
super
make
into
money
like
off the game, though, I think.
Yeah, no, you can. Like, I mean, if you're super into like online economies and like, if you're the kind of person that was into Bitcoin in like 2008, like EVE Online's probably your game.
Yeah. I feel like MMOs, they're not dying, but I think the theme park MMO is on its way out.
Yeah.
I don't think people have the time anymore.
I mean, like when World of Warcraft Classic came out, like when it was announced, I was all about it. I was like, yeah, dude, I can't wait. I'm gonna go out and have fun, all this other stuff. And then like it came out, and it like came out at like the worst possible timing for me, just with like IRL stuff. And I was like, excuse me, I can't afford to start playing this game from a time investment standpoint, and then B, like it would suck me in to be a form of escapism that isn't healthy right now. And I was just like, I made the adult decision to not even touch it, even though like not all my friends, but like a lot of my friends were playing it. And now I'm at the point like, I don't even care, dude. Like, why would I ever all it's going to do is suck out all my time. Then I started playing Dota.
Yeah.
So what do I know?
Like my hot take on MMOs like that are like that is you have to be a high schooler to have time for it.
That's not even a hot take. Like,
well, it is.
That's just like that's when I played WoW. Was in high school.
People are like, why won't people make MMOs like this anymore? Because people like the 20 to like 40 age group that grew up doesn't have time for it.
Yeah. Like I played in high school, and then like I came back for an expansion like when I was in freshman sophomore year-ish of college, and I still had time because I was just doing like all the easy stuff.
Yeah.
And and then I dropped it, and it was just like, oh man, now I can play all these single player games that I just haven't touched.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I've been playing a little bit of Final Fantasy 14, but like it's not much of a time investment, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Because they took out the grind for the most part. Like it still takes a little while to get to max level, but it's not like you have to play for 6 months, no life.
Yeah, it's not like EverQuest.
Yeah, it's not EverQuest. And like the game gives you mounts and like fast travel and stuff. I was big into a Korean MMO called Mabinogi when I was in high school, and that game had like no consistent fast travel back when it launched, and
Gotcha.
you had to like walk for like an hour to get to some places, and it was like, wow,
Sounds awful.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't a big deal in high school because like,
What
whatever.
else are you gonna do?
Yeah,
So that raises a question. So we have the only two distinctions we have right now are JRPGs and Western RPGs. Is there like a third category? Is there like a KRPG?
no, I don't think they
No.
make. I don't think Korean companies make enough games to.
I was just giving that as an example. But is
Yeah,
there like a third wheel of like a doesn't really fit either one? I mean, action RPG is probably the closest one.
yeah. I mean, like action RPGs. I think there's definitely a very distinct difference between Western ones and Eastern ones.
Yeah,
Because you have Nier, and then you have like Horizon Zero Dawn, which are very different games.
yeah. My I was telling one of my friends about the topic of the podcast today and how I had no idea what I was going to say, and thankfully I've managed to find a way to talk this entire time. So that's good. It's good to know. I can just ramble on.
I
But
think the ability to just BS for a long period of time has been built up over years for both of us. So
yeah, yeah. Emphasis on the BS.
yeah,
Um, and he gave an argument, and I was just like, "That's awful." And I'm just going to share his argument. I'm not gonna name drop him, but he knows who he is. He actually listened to the first episode. So if you hear this, uh, he name that rhymes with lawn. Um, you know, this one's for you. He said that he thinks JRPGs are defined by um, the character actually like talking and having a story, whereas Western RPGs, the characters feel more like a blank slate
yeah, that
and
doesn't
a
work though.
story. You know, I was like, so what about like every JRPG with a silent protagonist? He just kind of sat there and didn't respond. It's like, I accept your concession.
There's definitely more of a story focus in Japanese RPGs usually.
Yeah. I mean, I got what he was saying, and that's kind of why I brought it up. Is because yeah, no, it feels like a lot of Western RPGs, like a lot of them, it's more open worldish, right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, specifically like the Bethesda RPG, like that style.
well, even like the older like Baldur's Gate
Yeah,
style games, it's like you're thrown out into a world and it's just like, hey, walk around and talk to people. Like it's and your character has more choices, whereas like JRPGs, it feels a lot of the times like the character's personality is defined by the the writer and
yeah,
the design team. But and this kind of backs up your statement and his statement, so I don't even know why I brought it up. I'm like helping both of y'all. It makes Dark Souls more of a Western RPG because the character's sort of like a blank slate, and your actions as that character define them.
yeah, and there's just not much plot, right? Like,
Yeah,
there is, but like it's hard to find.
yeah.
Um,
Like even though Skyrim is like a meme, right, and it's been released on 20 things, like your character in Skyrim is a blank slate outside of being the chosen one. Like you can go to any town at the start, you can do quests. Some of them have more than one way to do them. Holy crap! What an innovation, Todd. Um,
I mean, I'll just say it. I think like Skyrim is like peak Western RPG, um, like because you actually like do have. It doesn't force you into anything really. Besides, you have to kill the dragon at some point, right?
I mean, it might be peak Western RPG is like the most typical example, like the easiest thing to point out of like, yeah,
It
that's a
just
Western
has
RPG.
everything, right? Like, um,
It's got the voice acting, it's got the awkward models, it's
yeah,
got the really weird writing, it's got all these people that just say things as you walk by, kind of out of nowhere. It's got really small dead towns.
yeah.
Yeah,
Skyrim's towns aren't the worst towns in the world. Now,
pretty.
Fallout 4, my God, I don't even want to talk about that game.
Yeah. What about? Well, yeah, I was gonna say like, yeah, the Fallout series. That's a pretty good Western RPG
Yeah.
one.
Once again, like it's the first person Western RPG is like the easiest one to say this is not something that Japan does, right? Like they just don't make games like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a Japanese game that is reminiscent of like Fallout and Skyrim. Thankfully, they know better.
Yeah.
They
I can
don't do
agree with
that.
that with modern Bethesda games. I will nod my head.
Yeah, I could go with the classic. Like New Vegas is pretty good because it wasn't. I mean, it was was it Obsidian or
Yeah,
Black
and
Isle?
Oblivion is very good in my opinion. The fourth Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah, Oblivion. Well, Oblivion tries really hard. Oblivion's ambitious. How
Yeah.
about that? I'm not gonna go out and say it's a bad game. It's an ambitious game with some stuff in it.
Well, it was
But you know what?
a natural evolution of Morrowind to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, it was the game when it came out.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, oh my goodness, look at all this dynamic dialogue and blah blah blah, and you're just like, yeah, but they voice acted literally everything, so the amount of writing in the game was like a third of Morrowind or whatever. I
Yeah,
don't know what
yeah.
the word counts are, but
Man,
yeah.
I have opinions on voice acting in video games.
Oh, me too. That's part of why I thought Dragon Quest XI was so insanely good, was because the voice acting was good.
Yeah, like so my thing about voice acting is if games are going to have it, not every line needs to be voiced because if every line is voiced, it usually like cuts down on how good the writing can be because they specifically like cut corners like you just mentioned with Oblivion.
Yeah. Also, I got to be honest. I don't really care what this homeless person has to say when I'm walking by him. Like, like you could probably apply that to real life. Like, I'm gonna put my headphones in and walk by. Like in Oblivion, I don't want some dude going like spare a coin for. Like, if I want to talk to the beggar, I'm gonna walk up and talk to him.
Yeah,
Right? Like, I don't need to hear the ambient. I get the ambient dialogue, right?
yeah.
Because it kind of puts you in the mood of being in the city. But like, if I'm talking to like a random person on the street, they don't need to be voice acted. They really don't.
Well, yeah, like Dragon Quest XI had some of the best cities in a game ever. Like if we're talking about cities in a game,
Yeah,
like
like yeah, all the like Haikuville. I don't remember the name of the place, but like every NPC spoke in haikus in that city, except for the people that were visiting. And they even commented on it. They're like, wow, it's really weird here. Like, what's going on? Like,
and like every house just like opened up without any
yeah,
loading.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's insane. So, yeah.
like that's the
But
depressing thing about like the next game Bethesda's gonna make. I guarantee the houses are gonna have loading times, and I'll be like, come on, Dragon Quest XI did it.
I mean, Skyrim had houses with loading times.
Yeah,
So, I mean, so did Oblivion.
I think Skyrim is like 7 years older than Dragon Quest XI at this point. So,
Yeah, you can't, that's like not fair to compare.
God, it's
But I
so
mean,
old.
like, to be fair, like a lot of even like 2D games have loading when you go into houses, right? It just
Yeah.
like loads a new room. So
Well, a lot of
it's
that is
whatever.
just like I think like the next generation it'll be fixed, and like there should be no excuse for loading times, because they'll have solid state drives.
I mean, the excuse will be, well, we're doing everything in 4K now, so it's all taking up
Nobody
way
cares about
more.
4K.
Tell them that, man.
Yeah, I mean I will because like I like every time I see like people talk about like 4K, I'm like nobody. Even if you have a TV with 4K, you're not gonna notice the difference. But
I've heard people be like, oh, it's super awesome. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'd rather have
I'm not
60
paying for a
FPS.
4K TV, so I don't care.
Yeah, I'd rather
Like
have 60 FPS.
when they're as expensive as just HD TVs are now, sure, I'll go get one. But like right now, like what am I gonna do with a 4K TV?
I can't remember if my TV I bought for like $300 is 4K or not.
Yeah.
It might be. Not that I ever get to use it in 4K because nothing is in 4K, but
Don't worry, next generation.
yeah, 30 FPS 4K, I'm ready.
Dude, Dragon Quest 12, 4K,
I mean, it looks
good
gorgeous.
voice acting.
Yeah. The real
But yeah,
question is, will Dragon Quest 12 be an MMO?
I hope not. But yeah, no, I definitely agree about the voice acting. Like, not everything needs to be voice acted because also whenever there's voice acting and I'm playing a game, because I stream a lot of RPGs I play, I get in this weird spot. This is just a me complaint. I'm just gonna whine for a second here if you don't mind.
That's fine.
I get torn. I get in this weird spot where I'm torn, where it's like, well, I want to let the characters say all the dialogue because you don't want to sit there and let them get halfway the sentence, then cut them off, and then go to the next one, then you cut them off, then go to the next one, cut them off. But at the same time, like sometimes I just want to get through the dialogue, dude. Like, I
That's
just want to like read it, hit it, read it, hit it. So you get in this weird spot, and like even if I'm just playing by myself, sometimes I'm like, it just starts sounding weird when you start cutting them off over, you know?
yeah. That's where I appreciate games that have like the auto dialogue option,
Yeah,
so you can just like put the controller aside and resist the temptation.
yeah, but I got a limited amount of time, and I got a
Yeah.
lot of 100-hour games I want to play.
Yeah, well,
So
well my big pet peeve with dialogue, while we're on this topic, is like when you talk to like just in general, it's usually with NPCs, but like it happens in other times too. But like they just have like a silly one liner that doesn't match their dialogue like at all, and that
so
that,
just
that
bad
bothers
writing.
me.
Yeah.
It really
All right.
does. I feel like just like don't voice it.
I got another pet peeve for you. How about this? If there's an NPC where you go to talk to them and they just have like an action that they do before they start talking to you, like they either have to set down what they're doing, or they get startled, or they like have to turn around, and something it just adds like 3 seconds to before you start talking to them.
Yeah,
Because inevitably what happens is you're reading through it and you're just mashing A or whatever, and then you finish the dialogue, but you hit it again and you have to sit through that animation again.
yeah. That's definitely calling out Dragon Quest 11 there. I remember
It's
that
it's
being an
not
issue.
just Dragon Quest
Well,
11,
I
don't
know,
worry.
but specifically, I remember from Dragon Quest 11.
But I mean, another game with what I would call good voice acting, where not everything is voice acted, are the newer Persona game.
Yeah, that's accurate.
So it's definitely voice acting can be good. It's just you definitely can tell when there's games or just media in general. I guess mainly games, sometimes shows, but mainly games, where they just hand. I'm gonna go back to what is it? Hold on, my brain is hurting. Sorry, I need to Google some. Valkyrie profile. I mentioned this on episode one. The voice acting was not stellar,
Yeah,
and it's
PS2 era, right?
PS1.
Yeah, same difference.
You could tell, like, it was very apparent that they just had voice actors and they handed them a script and they're like, "You're a Valkyrie. Here are your lines," and then they just read the lines, and it's just like the most like blase, like not. And I mean, maybe that's what they're going for, is like for her character specifically, is they're like this like unemotional, like I'm doing my job kind of deal. But like even before she was a Valkyrie, and she's just like a little kid, like the dialogue just sounds weird. And then there's like other characters that are human, and it's just like, all right, dude, you're a knight, like that's your job, and you died and it sucked. Like, what does that mean? They just start talking and they're doing like this noble, chivalrous voice, and it's like it doesn't really match what's going on. But like, I can't blame you, the voice actor, because I can tell like they just handed you a piece of paper and said, read this.
Yeah, that was a big problem in older RPGs, and like I actually noticed this recently with the Trials of Mana remake. They very clearly like got like the script in ahead of time before the actual game. Um, so like the voice director like very clearly didn't give any direction on like the first like couple hours of lines because like the voice acting is awful, and then it just improves suddenly.
Oh,
Like
happy ending.
specifically like the dialogue for Duran, the warrior guy, is just awful in his like prologue story
Yeah.
because he doesn't know what to say to match the character,
Uh-huh.
and it gets so much better after that.
Yeah. The other thing that honestly is pretty important for voice acting to me, I think, is the model animations of what's going on as voice acting is happening. Because like you can have a line that's great and delivered well, and then if there's just this awkward pause, because like even if you like have auto advance on the dialogue, like the characters have to like do something else before the next line starts
Yeah,
playing. Like there's just these weird hangups where it just kind of like, if you have any immersion where it feels like you're watching it just get snapped out.
and that's on the coders of the game more than
Yeah, that's
anything.
not even on the voice
Yeah,
actors. That's just something that can ruin good voice acting.
like the newest Tales game, its voice acting is just stellar. Like the best I think in any game besides Dragon Quest 11.
Hmm.
I I would never listen to the Japanese dub over the English dub
Whoa, whoa.
because it's just like, well, for one, I'm an English speaker. Why would I listen to the Japanese dub anyways unless
I
they're
don't know.
really
You
good?
might be a weeb, dude.
Yeah, well, but like it's just so good, and like specifically the main character. So this is Tales of Berseria I'm talking about.
Okay.
The main character is voiced by Christina V, and like she goes from like being like a really sweet like older sister with like no problems in life to like being like super traumatized and angry all the time.
Okay,
And
sounds
like
very
her
relatable.
vocal range on the character is so good. Because she actually like nails it to where it still sounds like the original character once she gets all traumatized.
Okay, so it's just actual character development through just voice acting. It's like show don't tell, but it's like
Yeah,
speak don't. I can't even say speak don't tell because they're talking, but it's like it's non-verbal audio show.
yeah, like it would have completely fallen flat if she didn't nail the part because like they don't tell you, oh, she's like really angry now. Like it's
She just
conveyed through all
starts
the lines.
she just starts getting mad.
Like, well, she gets locked in like a prison for like 3 years or something. So
Yeah, nice.
and every character in that is nailed though. Like English voice acting in general, for like the last like 10 years, like it's all been good for the most part.
Yeah, no, it's been getting better, and you can tell that people are starting to like put direction into it. And this isn't RPG ish, but like a lot of the Naughty Dog games,
Yeah,
great voice acting, right?
yeah,
And I mean, some of them they hire like actual actors to do the part, so it makes sense that they'd be able to deliver lines. But I mean, like, I don't know, it's just neat that voice acting is getting treated the
yeah.
way it is.
I think companies have more of a budget for that now, so they can just
Yeah,
throw money
that's
at
it.
it and not worry about it.
That definitely is a very big part of it as well. But just as someone that that's worked in an office on a team, communication between different departments is very important, and you can tell that like a lot of like that PS1, PS2 era stuff, there's just these teams that are compartmentalized and they're just not communicating, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of disconnect in
we,
certain things.
we talked about this when I was in college for engineering. Like during my senior year, the professor for my senior design class had like a whole uh, session at like the beginning of the session where he's basically told us like the most valuable thing in the modern workforce now is you have to know how to work with other people because gone are the days where like you don't do that.
Yep. No, you have to know how to work as with a team, and that's our life lesson for the day.
Yeah, well, it's true. You have to know how to communicate with people. Sorry, basement dwellers.
Yeah.
Uh, it's pretty hard
like
to hold an adult job if you're not.
like the amount of people that can get by without having to communicate and like function, very very rare.
Yeah. Well, if you're a Twitch streamer, you can make tweets like Leffen does.
Well, I mean, they still have to interact with people, right? Because they
Yeah. Well,
stream.
it's a different type of interaction though.
Yeah, that's fair. Most Smash jokes go over my head, and I'm just not into it. But I know who love this.
Well, Leffen made like a tweet on Twitter where he was like, "Working at McDonald's is easier than streaming all day."
I remember that. Yeah, okay, I saw that one. I saw that one. I mean, maybe for him, maybe if he has a really like garbage chat, but I mean
Yeah.
that's its own thing. Like, I am 100% of the belief that whatever like chat you have is 100% on you because you allowed it to happen and you cultivated that. So like
Yeah.
if your chat is garbage, that is your fault. I can definitely understand, when like people are like, "Oh, someone's in my chat and harassing me and I can't get them to leave because Twitch has like garbage moderation system." So like when people complain about being harassed, that's different. But if you're just like, "Oh, Twitch chat's garbage, like my chat's garbage," it's like maybe you should ban some people, dude. Like I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Talking not about RPGs, but
It's fine.
whatever.
We're about wrapping up now, anyways. 'Cause it's been about.
Yeah,
Yep. So
that's my closing ramble.
yeah,
Unless you have
my
something else
closing
you have.
ramble as well.
Okay.
So next week we'll probably be talking about a game series again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe a specific game, dude. You want to do an hour on? God, what would be really awful to do an hour on? I would say we could do an hour on Dark Souls, but that's not a JRPG. I do want to talk about the Souls series at some point.
No, I'm fine with that. Like it's a Japanese RPG and like the not the concept's not the word I'm looking for, but like in like it's made by a Japanese company and it is an RPG.
Okay. So we're bending the rules in that direction. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I just want to like talk about like the whole idea, but I'm fine with talking about Dark Souls.
The idea of people liking bad games like Dark Souls. Got it.
Yeah. And
No,
liking
actually,
good
I like.
games like Bloodborne.
Hmm. Yeah, we can do it. We can definitely talk about the series. I just want to say one thing. If you ever use the term Soulsborne, please delete every account you have on the internet and disconnect every access you have to the internet. Please. That's my closing statement. Now my friends are gonna mess with me like, hey, you play Lewis Soulsborne? So I screwed up by saying that. Cut that out. Just cut that out.
It's okay. I'll tweet it out in the newest episode. But today we're talking about Soulsborne games.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys. We had a good run.
Yeah. See you next week.